Okay, Chair Davis, we're streaming now.
All right, so now I will call the meeting to order. And we are all live and online. And can I ask Commissioner Darvish to lead us in the pledge, please? If you will.
Great, wonderful. I'll go.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. I would like use a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I apologize. We have a roll call.
Oh, we have a roll call. Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I skipped that part. Oop,
It's okay.
it's the glare of the light. Roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioner Byers,
Present.
Commissioner Darvish,
Present.
Commissioner Freiberg,
Here.
Commissioner Meltzer,
Here.
and Commissioner Shandrick will be absent tonight. Vice Chair Palmieri,
Here.
Chair Davis.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now I would mind what do you call it? A motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Byers moves, Commissioner Meltzer seconds. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any. Jenny, may I have another roll call?
Of course. Commissioner Byers,
Yes.
Commissioner Darvish,
Aye.
Commissioner Freiberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Meltzer,
Yes.
Commissioner Vice Chair Palmieri,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And then we'll move to the approval of the minutes from last meeting, which was on the September the 14th of last month. I have a motion.
So moved.
Commissioner Meltzer moves.
Second.
Vice Chair Palmieri seconds. Is there any discussion or any need to talk? Okay, and we'll let the secretary give us
Commissioner
another roll call.
Commissioner Byers,
Yes.
Commissioner Darvish,
Yes.
Commissioner Freiberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Meltzer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Palmieri,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Aye.
Thank you.
So then we'll move to the public comment section of the tonight's meeting. And I just like to remind everyone that we value your comments. However, pursuant to the Brown Act, Human Services cannot take action on items not listed on our posted agenda. Members of the public have 3 minutes which to speak. The public comment period is to address the Human Services Commission and not any one particular commissioner. This is the commission at large. If you have an issue with a particular commissioner, I would suggest you take it up with him or her in a private setting. Let's see. And an additional public comment period is offered at the end of the meeting. So if barring that, Madam Secretary, if you'd like to give us a person, I will let them go for 3 minutes.
Sure. Our first public speaker is Carrie Belmone. If you would like to go on camera and unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, good evening. I'm Carrie Balbone. I am a public safety commissioner on a fellow commission, and last night we actually finalized our commission assignments. I hope I look familiar because I have been co-liaising with Tori Berger, and Tori is now the head of our public safety commission, so he's our chair. So I will be co-chairing with our newest commissioner, Nika Sunxiang, who she and I will be rotating in. I'm happy to be here tonight. We're eager to continue to work with you. And I know Chelsea also attended our meeting last night, so it's good to see you again. And if there's ever any questions that you have on what's happening in public safety, please feel free to reach out. And I'm looking forward to working with you again. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Carrie.
We have a second public speaker, Yolo Dor is on the line. Yola, if you wanted to unmute yourself and please turn on your camera, we'd love to have you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Is there a problem?
Yolo, I'm asking you to unmute. Let's see
There
if
she
you're
goes.
able to.
Well, got the
Oh,
camera.
Is
There
that
you-
it?
There you go.
Okay. So, good evening, Commission. Yola Dore. I'm your liaisons from the Disabilities Advisory Board. I'm thrilled tonight to speak to you about Disabilities Awareness Month. We have two wonderful events coming to you this month and all the residents of West Hollywood. Our first event is a vaccination clinic being held outside at Plummer Park on Thursday, October 21st, from 10 in the morning till 1 p.m. The wonderful people at Cedars-Sinai will be there to host us and take care of us, issuing flu shots, COVID vaccinations, the COVID boosters for Pfizer, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccinations. Staff can give you further information that possibly I've left out. One more thing, and our primo event for the month of October is our service awards that will be on Wednesday, October 27th. Our phenomenal group of people this year receiving awards. You don't want to miss it. They are the best. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And always, it's a joy to be your liaisons. Thank you.
Thank you, Yola, very much for the information and for the compliment. And Jenny, may go for the.
I see we have additional people in the room. If anybody else would like to make a public comment, please use your raise your hand feature and we'll call your name up. Do we have anybody else in the room that would like to speak under public comment? Please use your hand feature to raise your hand. Thank you so much. Chair, we're ready to move forward.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to the consent calendar, which I guess we've already approved. So we move to update unfinished business. Update on the eviction moratorium and the COVID-19 emergency rental assistance programs. And this, David, if you'll take it away.
Certainly. Good evening, commissioners. I'm David Juni. I'm the manager of the City Social Services Division. And I'm joined for this report with Jonathan Holub, who is the manager of rent stabilization. I'm assuming that all of the commissioners know Jonathan or have met him, but if not, I'm happy to introduce him this evening. So the commission will receive a report on the residential eviction moratorium, including the extension of residential tenant protections and a status report on COVID-19 rental assistance programs. We're going to start with a brief report from Jonathan on the update on the residential eviction moratorium. So I will turn it over to Jonathan.
Thank you,
And we're hoping to have discussion, so please don't hesitate to, after we're done, Jonathan will start and then I'll go into the update on the rental assistance programs and then be joined by Derek as well to hopefully answer any and all of your questions. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Jonathan Holub, and I'm the Rent Stabilization and Housing Manager. Thanks for inviting me this evening to update you on the residential eviction moratorium. The city enacted its eviction moratorium concurrent with the declaration of the local emergency in March of 2020. For the first 6 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, most evictions were prohibited, including those related to non-payment of rent due to COVID-19 related hardship. From March 2020 through the end of August 2020, a tenant was protected from non-payment so long as they signed and returned a COVID-19 hardship declaration to the landlord within 15 days of receiving a blank declaration form. While rent due from this period is still owed and collectible as consumer debt, a tenant cannot be evicted if they've complied with the declaration requirement. In late August 2020, Governor Newsom signed the COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act to provide statewide eviction protections for residential tenants experiencing a financial hardship related to COVID-19. This legislation preempted local law with respect to eviction protection for non-payment of rent due to COVID-19 related hardship. It was twice extended by the legislature and covered West Hollywood tenancies from the period September 1, 2020 through September 30, 2021. Provided the tenant signed and returned a COVID-19 hardship declaration to the landlord within 15 days of receiving a blank declaration form accompanying the eviction notice and paid 25% of rent owed during this period on or before September 30th, 2021, the tenant is then protected from eviction. In addition to these eviction protections for non-payment, the legislature established a state rental assistance program, which will currently provide payment to landlords for 100% of rent in arrears and prospective rent for qualified tenants. Information for tenants who have back due rent due to COVID-19 or are still struggling to pay their rent due to COVID-19 should immediately visit housingiskey.com. Again, that's housingiskey.com for information on the program and how to apply. With the expiration of the statewide moratorium on September 30, 2021, it is critical that any tenant facing eviction or non-payment due to COVID-19 related reasons apply to that rental assistance program. So long as a tenant has an active application for rent relief through the program, they will be protected from eviction for rent that comes due through March 31st, 2022. While the moratorium for non-payment has ended, the goal of the statewide program is to give landlords and tenants an opportunity to receive full payment on arrears through that date, so as to continue to protect vulnerable households from eviction and to make landlords whole. Throughout the local emergency, eviction protections beyond that for non-payment have existed either by local ordinance or countywide authority. Currently, City of West Hollywood tenants cannot be evicted pursuant to the county's eviction moratorium. This includes a moratorium on no-fault evictions, which includes certain owner occupancy evictions and evictions to remove a property from the rental market, eviction for refusal to permit entry, except in limited circumstances, and protection from eviction for nuisances or having pets or extra occupants due to the COVID-19 emergency. The county moratorium was extended through January 31st, 2022. If landlords or tenants have any questions about the moratorium, they can contact the Rent Stabilization Housing Division at rsh@weho.org. Again, that's rsh@weho.org, or call the division at 323-848-6450. Again, 323-848-6450. Information is also available online at weho.org. If you go to the website and click the coronavirus banner on the homepage and then click Renters Resources, there's plenty of information about the moratorium and other resources that are available. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
So if we're comfortable with it, I'll just give the update on the rental assistance programs and then open it up for all of your questions.
Okay.
The city's COVID-19 emergency rental assistance programs overseen by NCJW and the Alliance for Housing and Healing will continue to be available to constituents during the 2021 through 2022 social services contract year. On September 20th, the City Council approved staff's recommendation to increase assistance to a maximum of $1,000 towards the applicant's rent, which was a change from the previous limit of 25% of rent, and to continue to make available increased assistance based on applicants' income and number of dependents. The programs continue to allow 5 accesses to assistance, and in addition, the City Council approved staff's recommendation that proof of application to the state's Housing is Key rental relief program be provided in order to access the city's program. So I'm combining this with the COVID-19 update that I usually give under staff comments, just to bring you up to speed. The Alliance for Housing and Healing, as of October 1st, 2021, they have received from the city $308,820 in emergency funding. They have approved 310 grants, which breaks down to 103 first-time grants, 83 second, 59 3rd, 41 4th, and 24 5th. This was as of the publication of this, the submission of this report. NCJW has received $1,576,201 in emergency funding. They have approved 1,588 grants and awarded that many, which breaks down to 478 first-time grants, 430 second, 379 third time, 211 fourth, and 95th. The California Housing is Key rental program to date, well, as of October 5th, they have received from West Hollywood, you can get on their dashboard and put in the municipality. So for West Hollywood, as of October 5th, they had received 1,700 applications. Of those, 1,661 were complete. Of those, 725 households had been served. So actually the percent served has gone down since last time I reported this. That's now 44% of the complete applications have been served. The average assistance is $16,010, and the total funds paid to West Hollywood community members is $11,607,480. We put we did do an attachment of that PowerPoint presentation. That really is for, I wanted to have that obviously for the commission. It gives a very in-depth picture of the Housing is Key program. And I also wanted to have that available for the public. We've been in close contact with our legal services programs, specifically Beth Sedek, who, as you know, provides the eviction prevention and defense program. We're expecting that there'd be quite an uptick in calls once the moratorium was lifted. So the first day was Friday, October 1st. We've had contact with them as of the end of the first week of October. They had opened 5 additional cases with regard to evictions. So thankfully it hasn't been maybe as overwhelming as we first thought, but that's just the beginning. So we are available, myself, Jonathan, and Derek, for any questions you may have about the moratorium or the rental assistance programs.
Commissioners, that's our cue. Anyone have any questions or comments that they would like to ask or share? You can raise a hand. Okay, I'm going to go with the vice chair.
Thanks. I was waiting for the others, but since I have some questions, I'll ask. I was speaking to David this afternoon, and if you go to page 3 of 7 for this report, about halfway or midway down, you'll see after March 2022, state laws allowed the city to enact a new eviction moratorium for non-payment of rent due to COVID-19. It's a little bit confusing. I understand that you can't usurp the state's rules at this stage, but this is the most critical stage. So after the most critical stage is over, or the first 6 months, you are then able to, or the city is then able to put another moratorium in place for non-payment of rent. Is that right, Jonathan?
Currently, as the state law is written, that would be correct.
It's odd that there's a window of space during probably the most perilous time for people.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
It's odd that there's just that window of time during probably the most perilous of time for people. But from what I'm understanding from what you said, and then from what David said, as long as someone has applied for Housing is Key, as long as they have their application number, they're going to be protected at least until that time, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I did want to say, and I've read this on all of the sites, or both of those sites and others that are providing rental assistance, that there is no proof of residency required. Is that true?
I'm not aware of any proof of residency requirement.
Okay, I think I just wanted to say that out loud in case anybody is watching, because I know some people are afraid to go because of a proof of residency requirement. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Palmieri. Commissioner Meltzer?
Just a quick question. What does that mean, no proof of residency required?
I took that to mean a requirement that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Vice Chair, that there's no requirement that the applicant show that they are, what their status is in the state.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, Commissioner Byers.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm first really grateful that these programs exist. People being out of their homes and at a time like this is just such an unbearable thought. And it sounds like there's been truly a life-saving amount of money distributed through these programs. I do have some questions about potential gaps in data, or just questions I have about maybe more data that might exist. I'm curious if we know or have a sense about what the need is, like, and what it would mean to really help keep people off the brink in totality. And I know that seems like a really wild or maybe abstract concept, but I know at one time we had some, data about knowing that 600,000 people in Los Angeles were living at 90% of their paychecks. That's really unsustainable. I don't know. I'm just sort of curious to know if we have a sense of knowing how much money would really fix the problem, to start at a place of high point analysis. And then I'm curious about like the cracks that people might be falling through. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Is somebody jumping in? No. Okay, sorry, Chair Davis.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. It sounded like there was somebody trying to jump in. And then I wanted to know if there are cracks that people are falling through. And I thought about some as we were going through this. It looks like the data on the number of grants that have been submitted is not existing for all agencies. I see it here on the Housing is Key program that their total number of applications submitted or received, and then ones completed. That feels like a gap that we could potentially address and being able to serve more people by making sure we can help provide assistance to complete applications. I know somebody I know who completed this application had to take a day off work to get the application submitted because it was so labor intensive. And just thinking about that type of what other asset we could provide to people to be able to provide the support is something I'm thinking about. And then it was interesting for me to note that there wasn't really an uptick. I also anticipated that there would be. I wonder if it'll change in coming weeks as that pressure becomes more real for people. And so I hope that we keep an eye on that number, as I'm sure we will. But I just also sort of raised an eyebrow at that, and just brought me to the last question about how we're getting information out to people about this program being available. I think that's really key to know that there's money remaining in these pools and people should be able to access it. So thank you so much.
So I can jump in on a few, and Derek and Jonathan, please feel free. I think your question, Commissioner Byers, about, what is the need? What is the actual need? That actually was a question that during one of our updates to council that I believe Councilmember D'Amico, asked the same question. And it is, it is very challenging to predict. I do want to, here I'm going to combine some answers. We did in last April, we did do an all city mailing of our new guide, but we also had an insert in that mailing of all of the emergency programming, including the rental assistance programs through the city. We continue to push out the information through, the city's website and all of our various forms of social media, especially with regard to the state's program. And then as I mentioned in the report, we are now, it's a requirement if you would like to continue or if you would like to access the city's program, that you are showing proof of application to the state. So it's difficult to predict, what the need is. I think it's interesting when you look at the data that we provided on the number of grants for NCJW and the Alliance, you see the decrease in the number of, first time, second time, third time, which, and believe me, we're in, pretty much constant communication with staff at both of those agencies and asking them, those questions. What does it mean to you? What are you hearing from the folks? Because they send out after, each month, they will send out for the folks who haven't accessed, they haven't received 5 grants, they will send a reminder to folks. This is still available to you, don't hesitate to reach out to us to apply. So if folks are, the folks that they've talked to, many of their situations have improved, so they're not coming back for, for additional rent. We have not seen, in addition, as I mentioned, that the legals, that Bethesda hasn't seen a huge increase in the number of calls related to eviction and the number of cases they've opened. They did see an increase in calls, but not a great increase in cases. We also have not seen a significant increase in the number of accesses to the rental assistance. So that, I'm not giving you concrete answer. It's difficult to know what the need is, but we do continually push out the information. We let folks who've accessed before know that it's still available if needed. We don't have, for West Hollywood, there's no restrictions as far as residency. Our undocumented community members are eligible for this. It's just showing impact by COVID-19. So then keep going with your question. I think I only answered a couple of them.
Oh, David, can I just add something to your answer real quick?
Yeah.
So just wanted to say also that service providers are making direct linkages to the program. So all of the case managers know about the program. And if anybody has trouble paying for rent, they link them directly to NCJW or the Alliance for Housing and Healing. And just want to mention the contract that I monitor is the Alliance for Housing and Healing, and I get data all of the time, so I can just kind of review that to show how the need is decreasing over time. So the first grants, since March of 2020, 106 were approved, and then for second grants, 84 were approved. Third grants, 61 were approved. Fourth grants, 24 were approved. And then fourth month was 61. And then fifth month was 24. So it went from 106 to 24. So that's about 1 in 4 people who have maxed out on their assistance.
And I can just talk a little bit about what the division has done to get out information, particularly with respect to the rent relief program. When the program first came online, the division sent a flyer to all residential tenants and in the city, both rent stabilized and non-rent stabilized, and the landlords. If we had information for a landlord, we sent it to them as well. We also have a biannual newsletter that we send out every year, twice a year, and there's one for landlords and one for tenants, and our last one went out in July, and that included information on the Housing is Key program. Of course, the website has information, the Renters Resources website page that I just mentioned earlier, and in our division, our information coordinators are there every day answering questions. And with respect to the volume, on Friday the 1st, not surprisingly, there was a high volume of questions related to the end of the moratorium, but the uptick is not as pronounced as it could be. So after the initial concerns, I think it's leveling out for now, but of course we can't predict what's going to happen.
Okay. Commissioner Byers, do you feel that answer your question? You're okay. Commissioner Darvish, you are next.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had similar questions to Commissioner Byers, so she already asked my questions. The only thing added that I have, first of all, just to share that this is amazing support from the state to be able to extend that support for, I believe, another 6 months, from October 1st to end of March of next year. So that's great from, to have that fund and support from the state. I was wondering how many of those that applied were renters and how many were landlords. I imagine that when you mentioned they were all renters. David?
The numbers that I mentioned were renters. I don't have the breakdown for landlords.
Yeah.
We can get on the dashboard and check that out, but I haven't looked specifically for landlords.
That's okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because the numbers seemed right to me out of the population in West Hollywood. Not all, obviously, were sort of employed population before the pandemic, so that doesn't seem too bad. I mean, it's very high numbers, so thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Palmieri?
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask this question because doing a deep dive into this report, also what I'm reading, and you may need to explain it to me. If a landlord chooses to evict someone due to non-payment of rent, they have to provide proof that they have actually applied for the back rent. Am I reading this correctly? And if they don't, then it may go to court and they may lose a big portion of their back rent.
Yes, that's the protection that's in place between now and March 31st.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Commissioner Byers?
Sorry, there was one question that didn't get answered, just about the data on the applications that have been submitted versus the total number of grants approved. Because I'm curious, when I saw in the Housing is Key that there was a gap there. So I'm just sort of wondering about that for the two other agencies here.
So we get weekly reports from both agencies that provides, this is the number of applications, this is the number approved. If you go back to the stats that we provided in the reports, as of the date that we are providing, that I gave to you, 100% of those have been processed. There's really no, although there has been a change. So what the agencies were doing was that the first 2 weeks of each month was the application period, and then they would close that and they would process all of those. So say the first 2 weeks in September, they took applications, they closed it at the end of the 2 weeks, and then all of those are processed for October 1st. So they do 100% for the eligible applicants. Now, since the eviction moratorium has been lifted, they've completely opened up the application period. There's no deadline. They will take applications throughout the month. But by the end of the month, basically, they process 100% of the eligible applicants. That's correct, Derek?
That answer your question? Yes? Okay, cool. Anyone else would like to speak to this or comment or question?
I just have a quick question.
Okay.
I just have a quick question about well, thank you, Jonathan, for your presentation, and David, of course. What is the eviction process? Is the city always contacted when someone's getting evicted?
There is a requirement in the rent stabilization ordinance that a landlord file the summons and complaint with the division, essentially. The actual language is the commission, but referring to the Rent Stabilization Commission, but effectively the filing should be with the division that I manage. So that is how we can track evictions. Whether all landlords do that or not is dependent on their counsel. So we do anticipate that they should be doing that.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering, worst case scenario, someone's getting evicted and they don't read their mail, or they have an immigration status, they're nervous about that, or identification or something like that. If the city would be able to catch something like that and then be able to give them an application and make sure that they don't lose that, even though, let's say, I mean, there's some really bad landlords in this city, and I know one building in particular, but, and I could see that person never contacting the city and not caring about, anything about that. So I was just wondering if the city would flag that and kind of maybe send them something or contact them.
That's a good idea. I think that, particularly right now, given that there is a protection for non-payment, that's something we'll look at.
Thank you.
Just one other thing I wanted to add to that. It doesn't answer the question, but I just wanted to get some numbers for context. So since the program started, 177 people have opened up cases, and 119 cases have been resolved so far. So 119 of those cases have, been able to preserve their housing. The other ones are just pending.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay, I have a quick question. It said in the report, I don't have a page number, but it said the actual amount, like $650 million in rent and utilities has been paid out to 55,000 households. It didn't say where the households were. Is that the state of California, or is that the county of Los Angeles, or is the city of West Hollywood? Can I have at least an idea?
Yeah, it's not West Hollywood. I gave the stats specific to West Hollywood, which was
Okay, well, that was
17,
just,
yeah.
I'm just being amusing.
Well, I believe that would be statewide.
Statewide, okay. So I wasn't sure what it was applying to. And then I had one other question. The paperwork that you will need, landlords asked for lease or rental agreements. Are those actual? I'm not aware. I haven't moved in a long time, but I don't have a lease or paperwork for my moving in to the apartment. How would you prove that? If landlord needed to prove something like that, or if a tenant needed to prove something like that, how would you prove it? I mean, I've been paying rent in my apartment for many years, but it's still, there's no actual legal document that says I should. So I was curious as to how did landlords get around this, or how do tenants get around this, or how can it be worked out? Because if it's a killer and it just outright ends the application process, then there's a lot of people who may have been in West Hollywood a long time who do not actually have leases.
Jonathan, is there any way for folks to get a copy of their lease, or what?
Well, one way
that's frequent.
If there's an issue with, I mean, in our experience within the division, that's rarely an issue. And you sort of touched on it, Chair, because there's proof of rental payments. There's other methods for proving that somebody has been in a tenancy, especially when it's been for a long time. But if it's a rent stabilized tenancy, then again, this depends on the landlord being compliant with the rent stabilization ordinance, but there should be a re-registration form on file for any tenancy that started after December 31st, 1995. So a Public Records Act request would get that. And then of course, any other correspondence that may have come from the city over the years to a tenant would be available through Public Records Act request. So if there was some trouble establishing proof of tenancy, the city is a resource. Beyond that, I would recommend that the tenant rely on their own records, particularly rental payments.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Commissioner Darvish?
I just had a comment to make on that. I think in your case, like Chair Davis, if you don't have an agreement, if you lived in the same place for a long time, then it kicks in after that expiration of the lease. It goes to month to month. But I think as was mentioned, all tenants should be registered. Landlords are required to register them. So the city would have documentation. I think the city does a good job in tracking those from what my experience has been.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for the report. Thank you very much for the very nice presentation. The PowerPoint, which we didn't see on the screen, but we did see in our hands. Thank you very much for all the work. And I agree with Commissioner Byers. I'm sure all of us agree that we're just thankful that there was such a program or programs to help people in need during this time. So with that, I would conclude item A and move on to item B.
Thank you.
Thank you. And item B is, report on the city's aging in place, aging and community initiative. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to separate that. Service and support older adults during the COVID pandemic. And that I'm going to pass to Corey Blank.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Corey Plank. I'm the manager of the City Strategic Initiatives Division and joined by Elizabeth Anderson, our program administrator in the division. And we are very happy to be bringing you the Year 4 report on the city's Aging in Place, Aging and Community Strategic Plan. So a little background, some of you are more familiar with the launch of the initiative, but to give a little bit of background, the Aging in Place Strategic Plan was launched in 2016, and it helps serve to formally organize the city's work around being an age-friendly community. The strategic plan and the associated initiative helps amplify the role of older adults in West Hollywood, helps the community visualize what the city is doing and how they can be an active partner in continuing to make West Hollywood an even more age-friendly community. Our strategic plan in the city helps connect to national and local, or national and global thought leadership on aging, including the World Health Organization, AARP, the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, and the California Master Plan on Aging. And I know Jenny's helping us tonight with the slides, and so I want to thank her too, and we'll put the first slide up. Thank you so much, Jenny. From the start, the city council has funded regular evaluation of the Aging in Place, Aging and Community Strategic Plan, and retained HMA community strategies to do this work. These evaluations have given us insights into community member perceptions about their experience aging in West Hollywood, as well as trends in service use and the collective impact of the partnerships between the city, our contracted agencies, and regional partners. This year's evaluation is a little different, as most things in this last year have been a little different. Our evaluation time period ran a little bit longer than the typical 12 months. We ran from July 2019 through December 2020 for a total of 18 months, partly due to the impacts of the pandemic and the city staff's need to focus on service delivery to constituents, and also helped us capture more of what the city's work was to serve older adults during the COVID pandemic, which we are unfortunately still in. HMA consultants conducted virtual and telephone interviews and focus groups with community members, with staff from our city contracted nonprofit agencies and city hall staff. And they also reviewed multiple documents and city records in order to complete this report. And now I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Anderson to talk about some of the findings of the report.
Great, thanks, Corey, and good evening, commissioners. So I will provide a review of the evaluation findings from our consulting team, and these are grouped around the themes of strengths, challenges, and creative pivots that happened in the past year in response to COVID-19, and we'll look ahead for the city and community as well. The slides will feature direct quotes from stakeholder interviews to enhance the information we'll share in each section. And right now we'll jump into the strengths of the initiative's response to COVID-19. So the overall sentiment was that the city and its contractors made an impact by quickly pivoting to virtual, remote, or physically distanced delivery of services and resources, by working hard to meet significant increase in the need for services and support to older adults during 2020. And this need remains. Older adults may require continued support to address the impacts of the pandemic on their financial and overall well-being. And here we'll look to a couple of quotes from the stakeholder interviews. I think the one on the right from the community member, where it says, "It used to be a group of people needed help from the city, and then all of a sudden, everyone needed help." It really points to the need in the community that came up in the last year. We'll go to the next slide. So other strengths, the city and the initiative strategically repurposed existing infrastructure for new uses to meet community needs, and responded creatively to meet community needs by relying on strong partnerships that were already in place from the city's long-term investments in older adult services, and that have been reinforced through the Aging in Place initiative the last few years. And here we'll go to the quotes on the slide, and both of them speak to the strength of the initiative and the ability of the initiative to respond. The community member on the left said the groundwork was there, so the city knew what they were going to do. They just had to do it. They knew who the residents were, and they figured out where there were going to be issues right away. And also from the agency partner, who said, The city was so approachable and responsive. The past experience with preparing for everything to support people and aging in place, it made it easier to resolve issues during the pandemic. And it was challenging, but not for the city, it would be more challenging. So both of these quotes speak to the preparation and the organization that exists within the initiative, and how that was a strong foundation to respond during the pandemic. Next slide. So next we'll get into a few of the challenges that surfaced during the evaluation from our consulting team. And those are as follows. There were observed gaps in older adult access to broadband internet and digital devices. And as well, there was a wide range of skills and ability to use these tools if they were available. And connecting with community members who had been less engaged with the city pre-pandemic continued to be a challenge during the pandemic. And communicating the rapidly evolving health directives and federal, state, and city eviction moratoriums, doing so in multiple languages and utilizing multiple mediums was a challenge. That's almost a challenge just to say that sentence. So you can imagine how challenging it actually was to do all that. And the community members spoke to that on the right side of the slide with their quote, where they say communication was so challenging because everything was changing so quickly. And next slide. Some other challenges that surfaced were locating emergency housing for older adults who were living in temporary shelters. So this speaks to people experiencing homelessness while also being an older adult during the pandemic. And then the big item that we're all very aware of was addressing the isolation and loneliness and mental health issues that were exacerbated by the stay-at-home directives. And I think these two quotes really connect with that from community members. I miss interacting with people and touching them. I miss the people more than I miss the stuff. And then this quote, I miss being at the library madly. Next slide. So a big part of the year was the pivot. I don't know how many times I've used that term professionally and personally, but that is definitely the theme of some of the creative responses of the city and its contracted partners in pivoting to serve community members. The following slides will feature some of the social media posts that we created in May of this year as part of our work spotlighting city services during Older Americans Month here, Senior Month in West Hollywood. So the city's transit operators for City Line, Dial-A-Ride, and the Pickup switched to delivering groceries and prepackaged meals to residents' homes. And with city support, Project Angel Food and JFS Nutrition were able to expand the eligibility for home delivered meals and to serve more people. And they were able to do that with the partnership with the city's transit operators. Additionally, the LGBT Center Senior Services Program brought their Pride Pantry items to people's homes. And when the city's summertime cooling centers couldn't open during 2020 heat waves, the Pickup transit operator delivered fans and water bottles to help residents who didn't have air conditioning to stay cool while they were told to stay at home. Additionally, the city increased transit subsidies to active participants in the on-call transportation program with a $100 fare credit and committed to completely subsidizing the Metro Pass for older adults and community members living with a disability. This made it possible for residents to, and they also made it possible to reload the city subsidized Senior Metro tap card remotely to take out the process of going to City Hall for an in-person reloading process. Next slide. And more creative pivots came out of the recreation division. Staff made weekly wellness check phone calls to over 150 older adult recreation members, and community members accessed recreation's virtual We Rec at Home programs, which are accessible through their social media accounts and through their quarterly catalog. And Recreation also created a new quarterly newsletter for residents ages 55 and up that's titled Community Connection, a guide to thrive at any age. This is available online, but also is mailed to 7,000 residents. So 7,000 residents receive this in their mailbox monthly. And not only does it promote programs that are available through Recreation, but it also has games inside and educational articles that address other issues that are of interest to this population. So we are excited that Recreation was able to create that new resource for residents. Next slide. The city and its contracted partners like APLA Health's HIVE program, the JFS Life at Home program, and the LGBT Center Senior Services program all offered virtual classes and workshops to address social isolation and increase access to available resources. So these are a couple of the other social media posts that we had in May to promote the services that we are contracted with at these agencies that serve West Hollywood community members. Next slide. The city and BetZedek increased access to renters' rights counseling, as you heard in the prior presentation, and also in eviction defense services. Over $1.5 million has been made available for emergency rental assistance via Alliance for Housing and Healing and NCJW. And the city communications team kept the community informed of critical public health information through multiple channels, including press releases, specific city web pages for older adults, telephone, mailings, billboards, message boards, and yard signs. The communications team was really focused on the role of the helpful neighbor to get messages to people who were not exposed directly to city communications. And this really speaks to the strategies to connect with people who haven't been connected with the city prior to COVID. And one agency partner called out that this, in terms of pivots, this was an excellent learning experience about how to keep essential services open to reach people. We learned what we were capable of, and we have more confidence now. Next slide. I'll turn it back to Corey for the look ahead.
Corey, you're muted.
Corey.
There we go.
There.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. A lot of this report is, taking a look back at what happened, and obviously lots of city divisions and departments played a role in making sure that our older adult community was connected and reached out to, and services made available. And what we want to do just now as we get kind of close out some of this report is to talk about how we look ahead and what we've learned. The learning is ongoing as this continues, but the evaluation opportunity gave us valuable insights into priorities as we continue to move forward. And some of those include the fact that this hybrid system of service delivery is going to continue to be needed in the future. And that also means that we need to look at prioritization of increasing access to technology, as well as access to broadband, internet access, and the tools or the capability to use all of those technologies. We have to continue to rethink how we use and design public space to have opportunities for meetings or gatherings to take place outdoors, but also not impeding access for people with mobility devices. We also know always communications is always a challenge, and we know that we have to continue to evolve those communications efforts to reach those people who aren't yet connected to the city or our partner agencies. And as Elizabeth mentioned, one of those strategies was to make sure we connect at least with the helpful neighbor or the knowledgeable person in the building that other people might go to for information. As we know from so many angles, affordable housing will be critical to continuing to help older adults age in West Hollywood. A couple other pieces of feedback that we received is that a city case manager for older adults would help enhance service coordination. And folks would like to see a formalized crisis response team that's specifically focused on older adults to help manage emergency situations. And then you can see here some of the feedback in terms of the food delivery and grocery program and the desire to have that continue. And that it's just such an important service, and it's important to have access because there's so much stigma still around having any kind of need whether that's rental assistance or food, that's something that we still have to work around. And also that age friendliness is giving older adults the support they need to live their lives, that we don't need to take care of them, but what West Hollywood is doing is giving older adults the tools to be able to interact digitally and to help support people to do the things that they can do. And I think we'll just close quickly with some of the additional work plan priorities for aging in place, and that is to continue to take steps to focus and deepen the city's commitment and our Aging in Place initiative commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice as part of our age-friendly work. And that includes, as we look at the Aging in Place overall strategic plan, that we explore each of those domains with a racial equity lens, and then work to increase the opportunities and participation among those who've been historically underrepresented. As you well know, the Social Services Division will begin sooner than we can all imagine the 2022 to 2025 RFP process, which will include contracting for services that will help advance our Aging in Place work. And as we've heard, consistently throughout the pandemic, that access and the ability to close the digital divide for older adults will continue to be a priority as we move forward. Having that access will help increase access to educational, civic, and social opportunities, and that will help then support better health and mental health outcomes. And so with that, you've seen how great some of the social media posts look. There's lots of information. So if you want to look at the overall strategic plan or previous year's evaluation reports, those are all available online at weho.org/aging. We are on social media on Facebook and Twitter at WeHo Cares. If you're not already following us, please do follow us. And then when those posts look that good and have so much good information in your roles, you are frequently the knowledgeable neighbor or the knowledgeable community member. And we hope that maybe you would take some time to commit to maybe sharing or retweeting at least one post a month to help us expand the reach and let more people know about the services that are available. And with that, I will stop, and Elizabeth and I will both be available for any questions.
Takes me a minute to refocus my eyes from the presentation. Would anyone has any questions or comments? I see Commissioner Darvish got his hand up first, so I will allow him to go first, please.
I try to behave and wait till the end, but didn't help myself. I know this is something close to Commissioner Nestor's heart for the past work that she's done. So I'm interested in hearing her input and question, but I wanted to thank you all for this, Corey and the team, for the presentation is pretty comprehensive. I myself being in healthcare, and I think I mentioned for 3 years I became a nursing home administrator, had a license to manage a nursing home in San Francisco, and it really touched my heart when I found out the social needs of the population. I had no idea. I was only 27 or 28. I really bonded with we call them residents. I hate that term. In the nursing home, the social needs were high. We had to have certain activities dictated by the state, by my license and nursing home license, indoor activities, outdoor activities. I can't imagine what this pandemic has done to the population, older adults. I know it affected all of us, different age groups, but more so children and older adults. I think that had a big effect. Just wondering though, would there be a formal survey from the population so that we could learn from that and maybe even apply it to an earthquake or anything that this could be used for, to reach out to them and help them with food or any needs that they may have? So that's all.
So in years past, we've done a survey has been part of the evaluation because of COVID and because there were lots of other surveys going out that addressed COVID, the need for, there was a survey citywide about the need for rental assistance and other issues. We didn't do the same survey this year. But there's also the needs assessment that happens as part of the social services funding process, where people can submit their service needs and so forth. But that survey that we've done typically as part of this evaluation, we did not do this year.
Commissioner Meltzer.
So I just have little bits and pieces of things to say and to ask. One, in terms of pivoting, and I really am the word, you guys did brilliant pivoting. I mean, you really, it was really extraordinary. Just a couple of things. One, I read that there are 30 social service programs for older adults, which I didn't know, and I think that's extraordinary. I do believe that many older adults in the city just don't know about this. I think you said something in promoting them, challenges in the ability to reach residents who had not historically engaged with the city services or had reached out for help. There are a lot of people like that out there. I don't receive the community connection. I'm an older adult. And I did join the program, which I told you about. There are very few people, the OV program, the JFS OV program, very few people who know about that program. It's extraordinary. I mean, it's absolutely, this is what they send out. Unfortunately, the program that I joined, I received this 3 days. Now I joined the program. I received this 3 days after the program began. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. And they are wonderful programs. You mentioned West Hollywood Park. Will that have programs specifically for older adults? Do you know yet, or is that not planned? Because you mentioned that in the, yeah.
Yes, I think everybody's excited for the park to come online, and rec staff has asked us to, be patient. They are going to have to train new staff that will be coming over to work in that building. They're going to have to learn how to lock up the building, manage the maintenance and other things around the building. So they're going to need a little bit of time to get everything operational over there. But we do hope to look at, what recreation programming would look like, what other programming might look like, either from partner agencies or others going forward. But they ask us to be a little bit patient, and we will extend that, because we all want to, everybody wants to get over there. It's going to be beautiful. And if you've been by recently, it's really coming along and will be a great resource. And yes, we will be looking at that, but we'll give them a little time.
I would just like to acknowledge something I read in 2 different places in the report. There's been a high rate of staff vacancies, staff who left before the pandemic and were never replaced, resulting in exhaustion for staff. And I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people out there who work for the city who are exhausted. Also, I'd like to know what happens. We are going into the 5th year of the strategic plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
What happens after the 5th year of the strategic plan?
So a couple of things, and Elizabeth, feel free to jump in here too. So there's a couple of things we're going to be looking at, and we had Dr. Benton and Commissioner Soslowski come and speak to you about the state master plan on aging. Mm-hmm. There are some goals in the strategic plan that we will carry forward and just institutionalize as part of the Aging in Place initiative. And then we are going to look at alignment with that state master plan on aging in the areas that match up with what the city's doing. There's some things that in that state master plan that aren't applicable just based on our geography and the way that the community is built out. So we'll be looking at alignment there, as well as trying to complete some of the goals that we haven't yet been able to complete in the strategic plan. and continue to operationalize those and institutionalize the work so that it's part of ongoing work and not just limited to the 5 years that the strategic plan out.
Yeah, yeah, exciting though. I mean, it's just, I can't believe it's almost there. I think that's it, except for one more thing, Commissioner Darvish. I really want to believe that everybody is excited about all of this work, not just me. Thank you. You guys are great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meltzer. Anyone else would like to make a comment or question? Commissioners, I'm not seeing hands. I'm going to go forward. If not, I do have a couple of questions really quickly, if I can find it all here. I was curious to see about the heating and cooling centers, the cooling centers in general, was providing fans and water for people who would normally use the cooling centers. I'm concerned that we may not be doing enough in that particular area, especially considering that the world is getting warmer. And so I'm curious to how many cooling centers are there? And is water available at the cooling center? I'm not really sure how those work. I do know they exist, but I don't know how they work.
So we have 2 cooling centers in the city of West Hollywood. One is at Palmer Park.
Right.
The other is the West Hollywood Library. But due to COVID protocols, both of those facilities were closed when we were having some of the heat wave in 2020. And so the transition to delivering fans and bottled water to folks, and thank you to social services and the transit providers and facilities for helping store and purchase those items, all were kind of efforts to mitigate the lack of access to those spaces. As things kind of went on, there were opportunities to open the cooling centers even recently, so that people could access those spaces in safe ways with social distancing and masking and so forth. But it's, that's, the cooling centers are, necessary, but, it's still hard to access as much space as we might want to access. For example, not being able to always use the library if there are public health protocols in place. So, but it was a great kind of mitigation effort to be able to do the fans and water when those weren't available.
I was kind of hoping that the fans and water weren't going to go away. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of, there are seniors who are at home who do not have access or ability to get to a cooling center. And so I was wondering if the city has, like within our social services, can we take care of a senior in an apartment that needs a fan and water on a normal basis after this? Like, thank you, David.
So the program does continue even after the cooling centers opened. Okay. So the eligibility requirement that we had set up was for older adults who do not have access to air conditioning. So, but there have been exceptions made to that for folks who have, serious health conditions. But the program does still continue. We do have fans and water available, and we are happy to, take your referrals. We still have our transit providers delivering those. We've done very few lately, but the program still remains even with the cooling centers open. And I do know previously they did have bottled water available at the cooling centers. I think they continue to do that, but I can check in and make sure on that.
So my concern is that heat is much more dangerous to seniors than anything else that we would experience here. But I would certainly be more interested in having something that is a little bigger in scope or a little broader. I know that maybe it's a space issue, but it's an issue that concerns me because the heat I don't know about anybody else, but it just wipes me out. And I don't know, when I was working and out and talking to people, I would tell seniors, you need to make sure they're out walking, make sure you're taking water with you, make sure you're doing this, make sure someone knows where you're going in the first place. So you're not misplaced or you don't just disappear. But there are a lot of, I think this is a very important issue and it's going to get worse before it gets better. So I'm kind of concerned about that. I will go on really quickly. The newsletter. I would agree with Barbara that it's really, really nice, but I'm also a senior and I've never seen one of these. It has not been sent to my address. So I'm not sure if it's coming in a bunch that's just set on top of something or if it's actually coming to the actual residence. But I have not seen one of these and I would love to see one of these. So in fact, when I saw it on the presentation, it was like, oh, so that's what it looks like. Okay, that's cool. But I'm not certain everyone's getting them and I'm not certain that they're getting out to enough people.
And Chair, if the commissioners are in agreement, we will ask Recreation to add all of your addresses to the mailing list.
I don't think there should be a problem with that. If anyone would like to opt out, you can talk to Corey real quick. But otherwise, I would also sign up Commissioner Chandrick. That will teach them not to be here. And then one other thing I was interested in is that talking about the West Hollywood Park. That's really nice. I've been very pleased. I'm very, very happy for the park. I'm happy for the library. I'm happy for all of this, but I'm very, very, very unhappy about Plummer. It continues to be, it's just not being taken care of. I don't know if there's a plan in the works, if there's something that needs to be addressed, but I'm going to continue to bring this up until I retire from the commission. And my first meeting was a meeting in Plummer Park on the Plummer Park Master Plan. That was in November of 1993. So I haven't seen enough movement. And if we're going to have seniors, it seems to me that the seniors are more likely to use Plummer Park than West Hollywood Park in the first place. So I'm just concerned that we are missing out on a very large opportunity to take care of our population by only taking care of one park. And that will be my last statement on that tonight, but it will not be my last statement on the fact that Plummer Park needs to be addressed. And I see a hand which will keep me from having to talk anymore. Commissioner Freiberg, please.
I think Commissioner Byers had her hand up now. I think being on the Disability Advisory Board, if there's one thing that taught me is how difficult it is to communicate with a certain population that might not be as mobile as others and might not have the computer systems, or they can't have people in their homes to show them how to use the computer. So I was just wondering, when you guys said earlier, I think it was David who said earlier that there was a all city mailing. And I know a lot of people didn't get this booklet. So I'm wondering, when you say all city mailing, is that just going directly to like every single unit and every single building? Dear resident, is that how it works?
It's all residential addresses, all units, and all businesses.
Okay. And then do you ever work with I know you probably do have connections with the landlords and you can tell them about these programs or send them information. Do you ever communicate with managers in the buildings and let them know about these programs that the city has? Because I feel like the managers would know somebody who's living by themselves and probably needs help, but doesn't want to ask. And they tend to have a little more information on, the tenants in the building and what they need. So I was just wondering if the city does reach out to landlords, because I know sometimes landlords don't even come near the buildings, but maybe the managers.
So we access, and I think Jonathan is still in the meeting, so if he is, we can pull him in. But we do send information out regularly, and in fact, we have information going out in the next rent stabilization newsletter. Jonathan can weigh in if it's both landlords and managers and tenants.
We don't generally communicate with management companies or managers. It's directed more towards landlords. As I mentioned previously, we have our biannual newsletter, and that goes specifically to landlords of rent stabilized properties. So a lot of the programs related to rent stabilization, and then in the most recent newsletter, we've added other city programming to the newsletter, and we'll continue to do that. So the short answer is landlords, yes. There is no specific program in place to communicate directly with property managers or on-site managers, which sounds like you're also referring to.
Yeah, I mean, if all the mailing is going to every single unit, I'm wondering if that includes the office as well of the buildings, not just the actual tenants. I don't know if you would know that answer.
For my division's newsletters, it's not going to an office. It's just going to the units and to the addresses for residential landlords of rent stabilized properties.
Right. Okay.
But if someone's an on-site manager living in a unit, they would receive the information.
Right.
There's nothing that goes directly to the management office in the building.
Right, but Corey makes a good point. If they're an on-site manager, obviously they've got a unit, so they will get a mailer.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add one thing to Board Member Freiberg? I just wanted to give you a brief anecdote. Today, for instance, a property manager called the main social services line. They had 5 older adults living in their unit that they were concerned about. So they asked to see kind of how they can help them, and we sent them social services guides. I told them about the programs that we have. So we do have property managers that contact City Hall when they have people in need in their buildings.
Well, that person sounds like a hero, so. But thank you, Corey and Elizabeth. I agree with Commissioner Meltzer. This is an extraordinary feat that you guys have taken on from the beginning, and I'm really excited to see where it goes after this year, because I know it can only get better, especially if both of you are working on it. So thank you very much for taking such great care of our residents.
Commissioner Meltzer.
Yeah, I would just like to add something to the important use of Plummer Park by seniors, older adults. We have at least 3 generations of seniors living in our city. And not all of them will go, many will not go near Plummer Park and are excited about the new park. So you really need to think about the different generations and the needs for the different generations. And the park is very exciting to those who are younger seniors, if you will.
Well, I think my point was that this has simply been glossed over for so long that it's an embarrassment, in my opinion. And I'm glad that it will serve. I agree with Commissioner Meltzer that there are more generations of seniors than just one, and they will pick different places. But if Plummer Park got any attention whatsoever, it may change the entire tenor of the way the park is used and who uses it. So I'm still going to keep banging on this like pot until somebody actually does something. I think the senior center services building itself is actually getting old. And so that's the only thing that's been done since I've been here. But anyone else? I hate it when I get on this little soapbox thing I have. But anyway, it is a very good report. Thank you very much. I'm impressed. I'm also hoping that this will continue, that the conversation continues after the actual expiration date of the reports, and looking forward to it. And just to give Commissioner Freiberg a plug, but I agree with her completely. It's the property managers who are more interested. The property owners, the landlords themselves, are not likely to even live in the building or in the state of California for many of them. So the property managers are much more, it's a much better direction of your efforts and time, because they know who's in the building, and who they haven't seen for a while. So Commissioner Palmieri.
So now that you said it, I also want to agree with Commissioner Freiberg. The manager in my building is very helpful to the residents, and a flyer going to him would make a large difference. We've had actually 2 or 3 seniors that had problems here. I live here, so of course he has access to me. But if I wasn't here, a newsletter or information on programs and services would help him immensely. So I'm not clear why a flyer couldn't go to office. It's just one more. So, that really, I believe, with Chair Davis and with Commissioner Freiberg, I'm also on possibly having that be part of the mail. I don't know if Jonathan can hear that, whether or not he agrees with it, but I just, living in a building that has mixed generations and a good manager, we do have a great manager, and I don't think he's the only great manager in the city. That's for sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Palmieri. Any other comments or questions relating to the actual report or the item that we're on? Hearing none, I'm going to move forward and move us to new business. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Elizabeth. And as I think I've already said it was a good report, so thank you. I'm going to move forward to new business, which is a request to install a memorial in remembrance of lives lost to suicide in the LGBTQ plus community. And I would like to point out that I misunderstood, but I think David will explain better what actually has come before us. So David, if you'll take it from me, please.
Certainly. So I'm going to give a brief report, and I actually, since agenda review, had a conversation with Public Facilities to get some clarification on the input that they are looking to receive. So I'm going to start it out, and then Derek will talk a little bit about his outreach to the agencies and their input on this item. So before you, the Human Services Commission will provide feedback on the request from City Council to install a memorial for the lives lost to suicide in the LGBTQ plus community at a park space in West Hollywood. So research shows that anti-LGBTQ plus discrimination and victimization contributes to an increase in the risk of suicidality, and that LGBTQ plus people are at a disproportionate risk of suicide ideation, planning, and attempts. This item directs facility staff to follow the procedure outlined in the city's memorials, tribute trees, and plaques policy guidelines to approve and install a memorial for the lives lost to suicide in the LGBTQ plus community at a park space in West Hollywood. The memorial can include a plaque, bench, or other marker to signify the space. This item also directs staff to gather feedback from the Human Services Commission, Public Facilities Commission, LGAB, and the TAB on an appropriate design and location for the memorial. The location should be in a quiet, meditative location that allows for contemplation and reflection, such as Laurel Park or Kingsway Park. Subsequent to the City Council's approval of the item at the March 1st, 2021 meeting, social services staff, Derek in particular, reached out to a select group of contracted agencies to receive input and direction on the planned memorial. So I'll let Derek review who he spoke to and their sentiment.
Sure. So I reached out to a few social services agencies that provide mental health services as well as prevention services. So for the LGBT mental health services program, they were very supportive of the idea. They felt like it provides an opportunity to acknowledge and honor the lives lost from the LGBTQIA community as a result of suicide, because they felt like it disproportionately affects this community. APLA Health their opinion was a little different. They didn't know whether it should be about suicide in general, specific to the LGBTQIA population, because disparities exist in the city among different populations. So they weren't too sure whether it should be just specifically targeted as it is. And then Trans-Latina Coalition had another point of view where they thought it was a really good idea, but felt like that it could be possibly harmful to community members who are contemplating suicide due to the ongoing challenges that LGBT people continue to face. And they said that more effort should be made to focus on more funding of suicide prevention programs targeting a diverse constituency. Now, I do want to say that we did reach out to the Trevor Project multiple times, and we didn't hear back in time for the staff report to council. So, so this was the feedback that we received from our contracted partners.
And so in reaching out this afternoon to public facilities, or our facilities department, they are looking for both. The council still did want to get input on the idea of having a memorial to lives lost to suicide, specifically in the LGBTQ population. And then they did direct, if there was any input on location and what the actual memorial should, what the physical space should look like. So they're looking for both. We're happy to take that, and we will provide it through the minutes for this meeting. So we open it up to the commission.
Okay, thank you, David, for clarification. And I will open it up to the commission for you and to talk to us about it. So I see Commissioner Darvish has his hand up first, so let's let him.
I think actually Commissioner Freiberg had her hand. I just had the symbol up, but maybe we should let her to go first.
Oh, no, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. Plus, you're faster than me anyway. You should be on a game show. You'd win immediately.
I can't help it.
This does look a lot like a game show from my end of it. I'm sorry. Paul in the middle.
He's like fast on the button,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go for it there.
Yeah, so I had input on both questions, location and the need for this memorial. I think it would be a good thing. It would highlight the sort of the community. It would bring to our attention that there's a large population that have committed suicide, LGBT or maybe all behavioral health related. I think it'll be a great thing because we have that, for the pandemic. We've had that for different reasons around the country. We've had those memorials, but so in our city, I think that would help. And I know that is hard for LGBTQ population. I know that's challenging, going through that emotional sort of, emotional needs that they have and what the society brings to them as far as, targeting them or saying bad things to them. So I believe I would support it. I think it's a good thing. And as far as location, I don't know if the main park has any. I know there was a dog memorial that was supposed to be planted there. I don't know if Plummer Park had any in the past has been looked at this for this purpose. I believe I agree with Chair Davis that Plummer Park should also be under attention. I know that the population east section of the city would appreciate that. I myself had a house. My first house in LA was on Fountain, very close to Plummer Park. I would walk down there, and I would notice that's kind of outdated compared to the main park. So again, maybe events like this could be planted there, and also some attention to Plummer Park would be appreciated. So that's my input.
Thank you, Commissioner Darvish. Commissioner Byers.
Thank you. Sorry, I was writing my notes. I thank you for bringing this item to us. It's really exciting to think about this. And I do think there's value in holding space for this really difficult and challenging topic. I think, just really tangibly speaking, any of the parks would feel really fitting. I don't know personally too much about the history of any of the parks, but I would always think about, if there's a specific reason or, a place that would make the most sense. But just was looking through some pictures of Laurel Park and Kings Park and imagining the different spaces before this meeting, and any of those are just such lovely spaces for quiet reflection. And I don't think we have enough places to sit and do nice reflection as it is. So a bench or some sort of seating area. I think there's an opportunity to include a hotline number so that we can mitigate some of the concerns in whatever ways we want. I think that, whatever sort of reflective quote or saying that's offered there is, also sort of speaking to that potential. I think holding that reality that that this may be a space that it draws people in of concern is a real reality. And I just wonder if, not letting it be in a dark corner, but putting light in that area, near it, maybe even a phone line near it isn't a bad idea. But I think, letting people know that they have a lifeline available to them in the most physical and real way possible is a really, is a way to combat the possibility that somebody may do something really horrific. I do think it's worth continuing to reach out to Trevor Project, especially because they are a suicide hotline resource. And so I think it would be valuable to have that sort of input. And I do think that because of the varied level of input from the different community stakeholders and agencies that we work with, that it would be really beneficial to keep them invested. And I'm sure we will, but just to keep them invested throughout this process. I think the more ways that the community that would be poised to be the most agile responders to any sort of crisis in any sort of way should feel the deepest sense of buy-in to this, and whatever ways we can continue to open up that is valuable. So thanks for involving us in this process. Excited to see what comes out of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Byers. Commissioner Meltzer?
Thank you. I tend to agree with Trans-Latin Coalition. I think what they're saying here is be harmful for community members contemplating suicide due to the ongoing challenges LGBT folks continue to face. They would need more time to, I think it's really not a good idea. I also did research, and there was a lot of conversation and writing about copycat suicides and suicide contagion. And I think that is likely to happen. And so I really disagree with it, with doing this. I also think if you decide to do it, it should be inclusive. It should not be just LGBT youth or members of the community. It should be inclusive to anybody who commits suicide.
Thank you, Commissioner Meltzer. Anyone else have a comment or an opinion one way or another? Jimmy?
So I'm sort of on the fence about this. I agree to a degree that this could possibly make someone think about something that is in their head and, I'll be memorialized, da, da, da. But I also believe that there's an opportunity to celebrate some lives. And a chair is great, a bench is great, but I for something like this, and I've done a lot of thinking on this topic, in my view only, and my word is not gospel, of course, but I think something living like a tree or something like that would mean a lot to maybe some families and some partners, and not just looking at it, a plaque or a bench that someone's sitting on, but something that has life in it. I like the idea of Commissioner Byers that it be a reflective space, but that could be under a tree. That could be, that's my opinion. But I am on the fence about it. But if indeed we are going to do it, I think I need to say this though. I remember years ago when a gentleman wanted to donate a significant amount of money to put a statue of Matthew Shepard in that area, that triangle. And the city said, we don't want this to be only about sad things. And then they stopped putting the fence up that we used to put to remember Matthew Shepard's murder. And that fence is in City Hall somewhere hidden, but they don't put that up any longer. So I did hear that for years, that we don't want this to be, like the cemetery for only bad news. And that's just a side note, but that was how council was thinking back then. I understand that it's a new council, and I understand that things change all the time. But I did want to throw that out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Palmieri. Anyone else? I'm going to speak really quickly on what I was thinking about. It was the very fact that suicide is not talked about very often, and there's no real safe place to bring it up if you do bring it up, or if you or to talk about it. So I think that having a place is a good idea. I think I agree more with Jimmy in the fact that it should be a live kind of a thing as opposed to a bench. I don't think a bench would be a bad idea as well. I agree with Commissioner Meltzer that it should be inclusive, that it could read in a way that includes the community at large. But maybe special emphasis on particular vulnerable communities, but I don't know. But I do know that the idea is not brought up very well. I had a personal experience with Cedars when I had surgeries. They ask you questions, how are you feeling? And then they ask you one about death, and they said, do you ever think about death? Well, I don't know about anyone else in this room, but I've thought about death for a long time. So I just pushed yes. And before I knew it, I was in like all kinds of trouble, not necessarily trouble, but I had therapists and calls and worries. And it seemed to be an overwhelming response to my response. So I see why I would never say that again. And so if I were contemplating something, I would be very reluctant to try to say anything in front of a group of people or a person because of the reaction that you get. So I don't know how else I can explain it, but I think it's a good idea. And I think there should be more dialogue about the issue itself, and not just with one community. I know my community has a lot of trouble with it. I have lost a couple of friends to suicide over my lifetime, and I would like to see more conversation. So that being said, anyone else have something else? Turn myself off. Commissioner Freiberg, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same thing to where I think we need to hear more about this. Like maybe if they have this in another community, did it help a lot of people? Did it save a lot of people? I mean, we could think about, yeah, it might push somebody over the edge, but if we put a lot of information out there and, where you can find help and things like that, does it help people or I don't know a lot about this. And it's obviously a very important subject. So I can't even make and especially after hearing responses back from Trans Latin, APLA, and LGBT Center, and I just wouldn't even be able to make a decision. This is something that's so serious, but if it can help people, that would be a great thing. So I'm just wondering if we know anything about any other community that has done this, and did they save people? Were there a lot of people that responded, in a positive manner towards it? Or rather found help.
Derek, with any of the agencies you reached out to, have they had any experience with other memorials similar?
No, they haven't.
I do think it's a good idea. Commissioner Freiberg points out something that just checking to see what else is done in cities or communities or places like ours, it might be, or you might be able to find out more information that would help make a decision. Commissioner Palmieri?
So I think Commissioner Freiberg is right, and I think there probably needs to be some study done on this. I also want to offer up that it may not only be an area of prevention, but it may be an area of solace for people that are left behind, like husbands or wives or partners or kids or whoever. So I think I think we do need to have a little bit of a study done on it. It always sounds great when we're going to have a memorial, always, but then there are all these. They're multifaceted, and I think we wouldn't want to make a mistake. So I think that there would need to be some study on it.
So, David, does that help?
Absolutely. So we'll be sure to capture in detail in the minutes. It'll go back to the Public Facilities Commission first before going back to council.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your input.
I'd like to pick the tree when they decide on that.
Okay.
All right, and coming up next would be excluded consent items, which we do not have any, and we will go to items from staff. So that will go back to David and or Derek or both.
We're going to go to Derek.
Okay, so just a couple of things I wanted to add on to DAD member Yolodore's public comment. So next week's flu clinic, it's a flu and COVID vaccination clinic. So Cedars-Sinai will be offering first, second, and booster doses of Pfizer and single doses of Johnson & Johnson. Appointments are for the COVID shot are not required, but encouraged. People can just walk up to get their COVID shot. If there's a person that wants to get a booster, they'll have to show proof of the previous vaccinations. And if somebody wants to make an appointment, they go to My Turn, which is myturn.ca.gov, put in their zip code and choose Plumber Park as the location of the COVID vaccination. The flu shot doesn't need any registration. People can just walk up for that. And then the following week, as Yola mentioned, there'll be the Disability Service Awards. We have 4 really great honorees. David Kruskal from DCRC will be getting the individual award, CVS Health, the business award, Step Up on Second, the nonprofit award, and the filmmakers from this film called Not Going Quietly about Adi Barkan will be receiving the media award, and they'll be accepting the award, which is a really big deal. So we're excited for that. I wanted to give you some information about the syringe services program from Being Alive. So they're on the 2nd and 4th Saturday of every month, and they reported good news in the distribution of Narcan. So to date, Being Alive has given out 118 doses of Narcan to West Hollywood community members, and 5 people have been saved as a result. And a save, which is what it's called, is recorded as an unconscious person who is suspected of an overdose to whom Narcan was administered and the person regained consciousness. So 5 West Hollywood community members were saved. And then for the total project numbers, which is everybody served by this program, plus West Hollywood, 386 Narcan doses have been given out, and there's 36 saves. So this program has been really important, and they're investigating new partnerships to expand the program to every Saturday in West Hollywood. And then just lastly, I just wanted to give Commissioner Freiberg an update. I haven't forgotten about your request for the fentanyl update. I'm gathering information. I'm going to be meeting with service providers and asking them about what's currently happening on the ground. And I'm waiting for some data too on fentanyl overdoses, but I will be sure to respond to you soon. And that's it for me.
I just wanted to add on to Derek's report and just kind of a reminder for the commissioners who've been here for a little while and info for the new commissioners. That syringe services program, as you recall, that was part of Being Alive's proposal, the last RFP process, the 2019 through 22. And, you know, frankly, it was a big deal. The city has not participated in, you know, certainly not syringe services programs, but not needle exchange programs. And frankly, I thought there would be a lot of discussion and concern about it, but as commissioners are aware, there wasn't. The city was supportive of that, and I can tell you that Derek, social services staff, the sheriffs, Being Alive staff, public safety, we, you know, as much as possible, we're very careful with the implementation of the program, making people aware of the program, and it's just, I just want to emphasize, it's been a great success. It was just relaunched. It was on pause during COVID, during the height of COVID, but has been relaunched. And I think that's kind of the, for, you know, especially for the new folks, you will, you know, there are opportunities for new programs and needed programs that we haven't seen, or the city, for whatever reason, hadn't been ready to, to contract out for. And that's just, I think, a really good example of the city supporting a much needed program. We're going to be on a phone call with DHSP staff, I don't know, next week or the week after, about how the county can really further support Being Alive and their efforts with this program. So I just wanted to commend the commission for that recommendation and kind of let the newer members know that, hopefully you will see, new and important proposals in this next process.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Thank you, Derek. Commissioners, wait a minute, public comment. Jenny, do I have anyone who would like to speak to us?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. You thought I was going to skip you. Items from the commissioners then. So I could go around, but I will just ask, anybody want to volunteer go first? And can't be, his name can't start with Adam. Yeah, exactly. Barbara, no?
Sure.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things. I attended a presentation by a representative of Justice in Aging. And it was they fight senior poverty through law. And the presentation was titled Older Angelenos Housing Needs, What It Takes to Keep Low-Income Renters Stably Housed. If anybody's interested in seeing that, I sent David the slides, and so he can send it out if anyone is interested in seeing it. The other thing is that I did join, as you know, the JFS program, and I had my two first improv classes. Thank you very much. I am looking forward to learning how to speak in gibberish, and I will bring that back to the next meeting. And also the Friends of the West Hollywood Library is opening their bookstore. We're having a soft opening on October 16th. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meltzer. Commissioner Darvish.
Thank you. I have two quick items. One is regarding refugees, especially attention being paid on Afghanistan and the number of refugees that would come to California. I'm not sure how many would end up in the city of West Hollywood. I did reach out to David, and he had shared with me that I think our Mayor Meister had requested a list that I have seen and is very comprehensive. But I thought about that as obviously as an immigrant myself. I shared with you all. I came at the age of 18 by myself, just a suitcase and no English, to New York City, and what I went through and the support that I got through church and also through two friends that I met in dormitory that took me to their families and got adopted by their mother. So that network really helped me to get through, being homesick, not knowing English or the culture, and not knowing what to ask or where to go for help. That was hard. But the list that David had shared was very comprehensive and complete. I was just wondering if we should bring, at some point, maybe it's too soon now, to bring a list to this commission for us to review, and if there's a population that is in need. I don't know if that's today. I don't think we have many refugees in LGBT or others that are in West Hollywood, but that's just one request for maybe down the road for next year. And then the second one is for our older adults, and I really enjoyed, again, because of my background and licensed nursing home administrator in the past, and how I got connected and learned so much from the older adults in that nursing home. They taught me a lot of lessons, a lot of wisdom. And I realized in our society, there's not much support, even from family members. They're too busy at that point to come to the nursing home and visit them. So I became that family member. But I think in our city, we need more, a little more work as far as, maybe a mini park on the streets. I live on Larrabee by Cynthia. There's a boarding care down the street from me, just a small assisted living with 6 people that live in it with support, and there's no park for them to walk. I see them on the wheelchair on the sidewalk. There's construction going on next to them, and then there are bars that are right just two buildings down from them. There are bars. They live right on the strip, and really, so they have nowhere to go but north towards my house, and there's no parks. I'm hoping to put an item down for the council to review that. How do we accomplish that? I know on Larrabee is a wide street, and I recommended in the past that would block maybe a couple of parking spots and have that as a green space for even people to walk their dogs, and however we can make it look more presentable for our older adults or all of us to enjoy in our city. I think we're lacking that. We have a lot of buildings going up, a lot of apartments, a lot of businesses, and you just don't have any green spaces unless you walk across Santa Monica where I live. That's a major street. For an older adult to cross that is really challenging. So I would like to put that down as an item. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Darvish. Commissioner Freiberg?
I think I'd like to push my luck a little more on this, the mailers to the managers of the building. And if I could even push it a little further, as we have specific mailers going to them about the programs, that's very easy to read, instead of just sending them, let's say, a booklet that they might not know what to do with. Maybe, the city can get something, round up something that says, if your tenant is doing this, if your tenant might need help with this, something very simple and easy for them to read, because they don't have a lot of time. They're usually pretty busy, but they know their tenants really well. So I think they can only, help the residents. I don't see why it would be a big deal. So I don't know how to get that thing going, but if we could get it going, that'd be great.
We would be happy to continue the conversation between social services and rent stabilization. I think, the first thing would just be, is there any, any comprehensive listing of property management companies? As Derek mentioned, and frequently they do reach out to us to get information there. We do have, I'm sure it's a mixed bag, but we have a lot of property managers that really care about their tenants, really cared, it was amplified during COVID. So I know they're out there. I agree with you. I think the first step is, do we have a listing of them? And I'll reach out back to the mailing company that we used for the all city mailing. I did ask them, specifically because, frankly, we had some questions because we knew a number of residents that didn't receive that mailing. So I had quite a few follow-up conversations on who was included, but I didn't ask that, Commissioner Freiberg, about management companies, separate from managers who live in a unit in the building. They would have received it, but we'll definitely follow up on that conversation.
Yeah, and I think most buildings have that office in the building. So if something could be sent there, that's very easy to read for them. That would be really great if we could do that.
Right, and it may be, as I said, they do, send to businesses. Maybe that's considered a business, but I'll get clarification for you and report back to the commission.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Freiberg. Commissioner Byers?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davis. I just wanted to mention, as it was mentioned earlier in the meeting by the rep from the Public Safety Commission, but I did attend the Public Safety Commission meeting last night, and it was mentioned that human services are sort of the antidote or the proactive intervention to so much that ends up becoming a public safety crisis. And I just thought about that, and it's been sitting with me so much that these meetings happen back to back. And there's, this opportunity we have coming up to really think about the gaps that we have. It felt in a lot of ways that the people who were speaking last night and some of the comments from the commission were that, there's a feeling of increased concern in the community around safety. And I know there's only so much that is within our purview around safety. But I do think as we talk about feelings of isolation, of people getting kicked out of their homes, and the emergency services that we can intervene with, and our ability to truly be as proactive as possible, maybe even to the point of knocking on doors, if that hasn't been thought of, to really reach people with these services. But yeah, I guess I have a lingering feeling of concern about the community's concern when it comes to public safety. It's maybe not something I personally feel myself, but I hear it in big ways. And in this seat as a commissioner, I just want to like speak to that concern there and say I'm listening, and that in the capacity that we can be proactive here and Human Services Commission to address people's needs. I'm excited to be tackling that challenge with this group of people. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Byers. Vice Chair Palmieri.
Thank you. I have a few things. Boom was passed by council this last week for an amount of money to help us get it. It'll be Boom, a live broadcast extravaganza. And we hired a company to actually produce this and make it as exciting as possible and as interactive as possible. We will be giving out boom boxes, which will be available at several locations for free to participate in 3 or 4 times when you're going to open up one of the boxes. And so we're hoping that will help. We're also going to try to get into the sober houses like Mac House, Van Ness House, WeHo Recovery Center, and possibly AT Center to have a cam there if they're throwing smaller parties so that they can have access to Boom, whether they run it in the background and just are having meetings, or whether they actually say, okay, this will be available for you, so that they're not tempted to go out. It's not live, and I get that, and live is always very successful. But I think the way that we're doing this, I think we're going to get the best amount that we can. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Derek, thanks for bringing up the fentanyl strips and the naloxone. I need to find out how to get more, because all of mine that are gone, and at this point there are 2 guys using in my building, and they do take advantage of the fentanyl strips. I just don't have any anymore, so I need to know how to access those. I haven't been going to any of the providers.
You can talk online. I mean, I have some in our closet that I could send to you. We haven't had an event in a long time, so I could always send you from our office closet. But I could also talk to the providers too to see if they will give you maybe 10 or 20 or however many you need. And in terms of naloxone, there's a couple of links I can send you to access it. I'll see, because there's sometimes organizations they can send it to, like a bunch, and I'll send you a link. First, I'll see if you might be able to qualify under the Tweakers Project.
So I had a couple that I was able to get from the center, from Pride. I have a friend that's very thin. He doesn't eat a lot. And he was here playing guitar, playing a new song that he made. And he goes, oh no, something bad is going to happen. And he fell on the floor. Well, I had the spray. So I ran in the bathroom. I sprayed up his nose. He goes, what do you do? What do you do? And I said, did you tweak before you came here?
So I'm going to jump in real quick, because we don't want to start a conversation that's going to violate the Brown Act.
All right.
So maybe this is something that we should follow up with an item, and Garrett can send you that information.
Yeah, okay. And another thing, the date for the COVID and flu shots?
The 21st, next Thursday. And it's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yeah,
and it's Plummer Park, the South Patio.
And as far as, I just want to reiterate that I think that the memorial really needs to have some really good thought put into it before we do anything. And I think that's it.
Do you want to explain to the new commissioners what Boom is? Unless they know, I don't know that anybody knows what Boom is.
I'm sorry.
Or they may, I don't know.
Boom is the annual sober New Year's Eve party that we throw, that the city co-sponsors along with some other providers. And it's normally live, and it's very successful, between 500 and 800 people, but we can't do it live this year, so we're just doing what we can. Last year we had nothing, so we wanted to offer at least something this year.
Okay. I kind of like the idea of boom box. That brings back a memory that I have, but maybe some of the younger commissioners do not have. But yes.
They're very retro.
Yeah, very retro. For my part of the items from commissioners, I heard someone speaking about homelessness and talking about refugees, and said that our homeless are actually refugees, that they are been pushed out of where they belong, and now they're on our streets or in our communities. And so in a lot of respects, refugee and homelessness, they kind of go like this. And it made sense to me, and it made for an interesting thought that I had never really associated the two words together before. Also, I would like to remind everyone that in November, there will be an election in November, which is the next meeting. And so there will be election for chair and vice chair. The chair is not allowed to succeed himself, which is thankful. There was a time when that was not true, and I did succeed myself a couple of times, so be thankful. But just to remind you of that and have some ideas of, of where you would like to go with the elections. And on a personal note, I retired on the 17th of September, and I've spent the last 3 weeks navigating retirement, which is Medicare and parts and things that I never knew I wanted to know before. So it's been a very interesting experience. I've had a lot of help, and I want to thank everyone, especially Derek. Thank you for getting me towards APLA. I would not have thought of that. I was just already ready to what do you call it, not take my medications again. So it is nice to be retired, and I will be able to foot myself off to places where I have not been able to go before, and look at and do some things that will be nice with the city. So with that, and it's exciting for me. I'm sorry, I didn't actually expect to do this. I've been HIV positive since the 80s. And really, it's just marvelous. I wish that all the men that I knew then were here now so I could enjoy it with them, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So with that said, I will adjourn the meeting, and have a good night. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Good
you so
night,
much.
everybody.
Take care.
Good night.
See you next